Okay, we have just concluded a module in which we were looking at purpose in business. And we looked at collective purpose in business and at individual purpose. And in response to the question, what is the purpose of business when you think of business as an enterprise as a whole, and not in terms of what is our individual purpose as business persons, two major responses have been given, and we talked about those two responses. One is the shareholder view, and the other is the stakeholder view. We explicated what those meant. The shareholder view, in brief, is just that the purpose of business is to benefit the owners, and in particular, to make money for the owners. And the stakeholder view is that the purpose of business is to benefit a variety, come on in, Deontay, to benefit a variety of different stakeholders, all of whom are deserving of benefits by virtue of their contribution to the business enterprise. We also looked to a certain extent at purposes in business from an individual perspective. What is my purpose in business? And I want to explicate that second inquiry at greater length in our second module here. Okay, what is my purpose as an individual person in business? Okay, and it might be useful here for us just to take a quick minute and to do a quick exercise. So if you would just write down 2 to 3 reasons, this won't take more than about 3 minutes, maybe 4, 2 to 3 reasons why you personally want to go into business. Okay, what is your motivation to do this? Why do you want to go into business? And then we'll reconvene momentarily. In this module, we're going to be exploring the connection between Christianity and the business enterprise. And we're going to be exploring the question whether one can be a successful Christian, as in live out one's faith in full accordance with the moral principles of Christianity, and also be a successful business person. And I hope I can convince you that it is possible to be a successful Christian in business and a successful financial business person, successful business person financially. Okay, capitalism is not Christian. However, Christians, I think, can operate within a capitalist system in a manner that is consistent with their Christianity. Why is capitalism not Christian? Well, it is an enterprise, a system that pits our interests against each other. Okay, a competitive system that sets up our interests against each other so as to maximize things like Dylan's efficiency, so as to maximize your creativity, your innovative skills, as I mentioned earlier in class, with the hope of making society as a whole better off. Okay, when one person creates or innovates so as to beat his competitors, the idea is that society as a whole can benefit. When one person makes his supply chain more efficient so as to beat his competitors and make more money, the idea is that society as a whole can benefit. Okay, capitalism is not Christian. Capitalism incentivizes self-interest. Capitalism pretty clearly it gives us all sorts of reasons to try to exploit others. It gives us all sorts of reasons to try to maximize our own welfare, our own well-being at the expense of others. Okay, and in order to succeed financially in a capitalist system, you have to think about self-interest. As I've mentioned earlier in class, this is in conflict with Christian moral teachings. Christian moral teachings throughout the New Testament and in the theological tradition tell us about the importance of looking after the interests of others, of being generous, of being kind, of embodying virtues of love, and of mercy, and of other kinds of qualities that are hard to find sometimes in a capitalist system. So there's a certain sort of tension there. How can one be a Christian successfully in a capitalist system? Well, the key is to look after your own interests, that is the financial well-being of your own enterprise, and simultaneously to look after the interests of your customers, to look after the interests of your suppliers, to look after your own interests and the interests of others simultaneously. And in doing so, you can be a successful Christian and a financial success at the same time. Let's get started with this module. If you look, we're actually running a class period behind, so pull out your texts, and we're going to go ahead and get started with today's first article. Okay, I don't see many Beyond Integrity texts. You have it on Kindle, thank you. You have ordered yours, but it is not here. Others? Well, we were in the Business Ethics in Action text for several weeks. Yes, and now we've moved to the Beyond Integrity text. We're going to be here for several weeks.
Okay, well, I have that.
Then we will go back. We are not doing them simultaneously. We're going to be here for several weeks, and then we're going to go back to the Business Ethics in Action text. Okay, I didn't want you to have to carry all of that around in your backpack. Okay, everybody, please bring your text. It's a lot harder for us to have a good conversation and to, connect in the classroom around the material when people haven't read the text or don't have their text in front of them. Okay, and if this does continue, I may try to find some form of reading accountability. Reading accountability is pretty hard to keep because half our population is online right now, and it's hard for me to do the pop quizzes that I usually do in class, but if you guys force me, I may have to. Anyway, let's move on, and let's go ahead and look at this. Let's look at this Aidney article on page 47. This is where we're starting out. Okay, Aidney is interested in asking the question, how can we understand the relevance of the biblical text for contemporary moral decision making? And he's not just interested in moral decision making in business, he's interested in moral decision making in general, although certainly he does think about business cases and has business in mind. And immediately, when we ask ourselves the question, what is the relevance of the biblical text for our own moral decision making today, we encounter some problems. Okay, and perhaps the largest of these problems is the simple cultural foreignness of the biblical text. If you look on page 48 in the first column, towards the bottom, Aidney writes, there's an overlap between the cultures of the Bible and the cultures of its readers in every age. If there weren't, the task of reading such a foreign text would be impossible. But there are also pervasive differences. If we do not understand these differences, the ethical teaching of the Bible remains incomprehensible. And then on the next, in the next column, on the same page, the problem comes when the Bible's questions and its answers seem totally foreign and incomprehensible to us. Whatever their doctrine of Scripture, most Christians simply ignore the parts that seem irrelevant. Okay, let me just give you an illustration of how the Bible is culturally foreign to us. Most of us these days, at least in modern America, live our lives in cities. And yet, the people who were the recipients of the parables of Jesus of Nazareth were agrarian people. And the parables are very agrarian. And I'm sure there are all sorts of assumptions that inform the parables of Jesus of Nazareth that would have been immediately evident to the recipients of those parables, the original recipients, that are not evident to me because I'm a city dweller and I don't know all sorts of things about farming. Okay, and that's culturally foreign. That makes the moral teachings of those parables difficult sometimes to penetrate. It makes them culturally foreign to me. Okay, and you're not going to find specific guidance in the biblical text. You won't find guidance about whether it is ethically upright to sell a package of mortgage-backed securities that have been rated AAA by Fitch's or Standard & Poor's or Moody's, but that might contain certain bonds that aren't necessarily justifiably AAA. You don't find that kind of guidance in the biblical text. Okay, instead, what you do find are general purpose themes. Okay, and I'm going to expand on this from the Aidney article momentarily, but what you do find in the biblical text are overarching moral themes, a kind of a 30,000-foot perspective, if you will. If you're flying in a plane and you look out the window, it's really hard, in fact, it's impossible from 30,000 feet to pick out individual houses. But you can see general themes and contours in the landscape pretty easily. You can see when you're over forest or desert or a lake or mountains. And similarly, the biblical text has certain general moral themes throughout it. And it is by absorbing those moral themes, I would argue, that we can come to see the relevance of the biblical text for our own moral decision-making today. In other words, it is by taking that 30,000-foot perspective from the biblical text and absorbing it into our lives and then deploying it in our everyday, immediate, granular decision-making that we can be successful Christians in business. Okay, and Aidney writes as much on page 51 in the first column. Aidney says here, the primary way we learn goodness from the Bible is by making the story of the Bible the interpretive framework through which we view all of life. This approach does not deny that we learn propositions or doctrines from the scriptures. A little further down, quoting Lindbeck, Aidney writes, a comprehensive scheme or story used to structure all dimensions of existence is not primarily a set of propositions to be believed, but is rather the medium in which one moves, a set of skills that one employs in living one's life. Its vocabulary of symbols and its syntax may be used for many purposes, only one of which is the formulation of statements about reality. Okay, so Aidney is saying in this section, he goes on to argue at greater length, he's saying in this section that the way you make the Bible a successful decision-making framework is to absorb it and live it out in your character state in a regular way on a daily basis, even when it hurts, even when it costs you in the short term financially. Although actually I believe personally that living out biblical principles almost always in business over the long term leads to greater financial success. But I agree, not in the short term it often does not. And in fact, in the short term it's precisely the opposite much of the time. Okay, still, if you make it a regular habit to think in terms of biblical moral themes in your moral decision making in business, then you will know in difficult times and in difficult circumstances precisely what the course of action should be that you should do in order to act in a way that is consistent with Christian moral teachings. Okay, it is not the sort of thing, ethics is not the sort of thing that you can just turn on or off. It is not the sort of thing that you can do without having practiced at it. Okay, just like you cannot take up an instrument and play music, beautiful music, having had no practice at it, or suddenly learn how to ride a bicycle with no stumbling starts or stops or long hours of practice. So also in the field of morality, it is the same. You do not wake up and become a person of integrity at age 53 when you're facing a difficult corporate decision and you are not sure what to do. Rather, integrity is something that you absorb over a lifetime by virtue of a variety of different, thousands of different small decisions, each of which is honest, each of which keeps your contract, keeps your word, and does as promised. Okay, when we look at the biblical text, what are the themes that emerge? Well, one theme that immediately emerges as one of the central financial concerns of the biblical text is concern for poor people. You don't have to go very far in the Christian scriptures to see this. It's pretty much everywhere, all over the place. Let me just read you a real quick set of verses here. This is from Proverbs in the Old Testament. Do not exploit the poor because they are poor. Do not crush the needy in court. Here's another Old Testament section. Do not show favoritism to the wealthy in lawsuits. Here's another one. Do not deny justice to poor people in their lawsuits. Okay, and on and on. You can find this. Defend the weak and fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. You can find this throughout the scriptures. It's a theme that's pretty ubiquitous. Okay, what does that mean for us as business persons? Well, it probably means that when you're facing a vulnerable counterparty, if you are a landlord and you could negotiate a vulnerable counterparty all the way into bankruptcy or to some other, bad financial outcome, it probably means showing some form of mercy to such a person in such a circumstance. Okay, maybe it means giving generously of your profits. One way that my wife and I have interpreted the biblical injunctions about caring for the poor is that we give a substantial percentage of our income regularly, even when it's painful, to help poor people for charitable causes. Okay, and actually that's beneficial to us as well, honestly. I'll tell you why in a minute, but it does fulfill the biblical mandate. Okay, what are some other biblical moral themes? Well, keeping contracts, keeping one's word, being honest, these are themes that are present throughout the scriptures. Often this is actually a moral stance that leads to short-term pain, like I mentioned a minute ago. Often being honest, keeping contracts, keeping one's word, it harms you financially in the short term. But if you build up a reputation for being honest, for keeping your word, and people over a long period of time know that they can trust you to do as you have promised in your business contracts, then your business will get much better. It will go a lot better as a result of the reputation that you have established. Okay, so it is an important business principle found in the Christian scriptures, and it's also a business principle that's good for those who keep it. Okay, another theme is the importance of saving or investing. You can find this in a bunch of different biblical passages on money. Okay, one of the most famous parables told by Jesus of Nazareth is a parable about talents, the parable of the talents is what it's called. And basically, this wealthy landlord has 3 servants, and he leaves each of them a certain amount of money or talents. Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the breakdown is 10, 5, and 1. I think that's right. Okay, is that correct, Rebecca? Okay. And the 2 dudes who are given 10 and 5 go off and invest it and make more. And the dude who makes 1 just buries it in the ground, and the landlord comes back and he chastises the dude who just buried it in the ground, and he praises those who have invested their money. Okay, so the upshot of the parable seems to be that we are to deploy our financial resources for the sake of greater gains, for the sake of, further gains monetarily, or further gains in terms of efficiency, or further gains in terms of just infrastructure building. Okay, the importance of investing is a key principle. Okay, here's another principle that can be found throughout the biblical text. I'll just list one last one here. There are lots of others. Okay, the dangers of greed, or as the Bible likes to call it, the excessive love of money. Okay, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Is in fact a verse in the New Testament. This is pretty self-evident. You don't have to be in capitalism for very long to see what the love of money drives people to do. Drives people to do all sorts of nefarious things to each other. Horrible, horrible things that are done to each other. in the name of profits, in the name of exploitation. We're going to look at several junctures this semester at some of the developing world factories. Okay, and first world companies, multinational companies, MNCs, have a pretty bad reputation when it comes to their treatment of workers in garment factories, in shoe assembly factories, in electronics assembly factories in the developing world. And their treatment of those workers is often driven by a desire to maximize profit, even though often these first world companies have already loads and loads of profits. They want to make even more, and to do so, they find the most vulnerable working class that they can find, and they maximize profits by paying them a pittance. Okay, the love of money can drive people in capitalist systems to do all sorts of things that exploit others, but it can also be dangerous for the people who are consumed by it. Right? So the love of money is something that can consume our own characters and make us, shriveled personalities. This is kind of a caricature from literature, but you guys, I hope, are all familiar with it. The Scrooge character in A Christmas Carol, yes? Most of us have encountered A Christmas Carol in a movie form or read the book. Okay, the guy has spent a lifetime basically being consumed by the worst tendencies in capitalism. And he exploits others. He's made a mint. And he is visited by his former business partner, Marley, who tells him that he's going to be visited again by 3 spirits, and these spirits are going to be the spirits of Christmas past, present, and future. Okay, and the moral of the story is that Scrooge comes to realize that he has become just this hollowed out individual who is destined for hell. I mean, he's headed for hell. And he can encounter Marley, who's there, this ghost who comes and visits him. And he seeks to reform himself as a result of his meetings with the spirits. Okay, so the excessive love of money can be dangerous for us. Yet at the same time, the Christian scriptures do emphasize the value of money. You can find this in the book of Proverbs. So money is very valuable for many things. Money can buy us time with friends and family. Money can buy us an education. Money can buy us vacations. Money can buy us prosperous dwellings. There are all sorts of things. Leisure. It can buy us all sorts of valuable things in life. So there seems to be a need for some sort of a balance between an appreciation of the value of money and an ability to use money for successful purposes, but at the same time, a wariness of the dangers of the excessive love of money and the ways that can consume people. Let me throw it open to you guys for just a minute here. Let's all think together, groupthink. How can we, as participants in a system, a capitalist system that incentivizes self-interest, how can we protect ourselves from the excessive love of money? How is that something that we can, guard ourselves against? What practical action steps can we take? Yeah, Marissa.
I guess my question is, where do you draw that line
Yeah.
between importance of investing, where it says we're to deploy our financial resources to obtain further
Sure.
gains, and then
Yeah.
the dangers of greed?
Yeah. That is the question, isn't it?
Those seem to contradict each other.
Yeah, that is the question. I agree. Without a doubt, the biblical text is clear that investing and saving are valuable things, and money can be deployed for good purposes. And it's also clear that greed is a horrible kind of a disease to have consume oneself. So I totally get it. I'm with you, and I don't know is my answer, speaking personally, but I do know. I think certain practices that we can do to maybe regularly detox from the consuming love of money. So I'll get us started with one. Okay, you guys be thinking of any other practical action steps that can be taken, but I'll get us started with one. Regularly giving away a portion of your income. Okay, it's like a cleanse. Okay, it's like a purging. And yes, it is valuable, like I mentioned a minute ago, for the poor people or whoever are the recipients of it, but it's also valuable for yourself so that you can realize that, this is something that you have been blessed with. It's great that you have it, and now give a percentage of it away to show that, you're not controlled by it. You have mastery over this. Yeah, Rebecca?
I guess mine is kind of an add-on to that. But one thing I like from Dave Ramsey is that it's the first thing that you decide. Once you get your paycheck, you immediately decide how much percentage you're going to give away.
Uh-huh, okay.
And you can't just change that.
Okay.
Depending on what circumstance you're in.
Okay.
So it's like a commitment to yourself.
Sure, sure. And when you have that commitment over a long period of time, and again, it doesn't have to be an enormously large percentage, but it does, a regular percentage. It can be very valuable as a personal character building exercise. Okay, other ideas?
Donating clothes.
Clothes? Okay, good. Good. Others? So he?
Not just percentage of giving away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like personally, I also like to do a portion, like I love percentage. I love doing the ratios and stuff because when you get rich, I don't know, you might want to spend more. I don't know, but I like to save. Like let's say, I mean, it varies, but right now, like save 50% of my income for education.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, I mean, I think when you and then do like 10% for myself, and I also do 10% for like Christmas and the other 10% for tithing or something like that.
Okay, sure.
So like once I have that,
Like a regular budget or something like that is a way for you to
yeah,
keep
and
your
I think the
finances
percentage-
under control.
Yes, but the percentage is like so good for me, I think, because when I used to do it with a fixed amount and your salary change and stuff like that.
Sure.
Then you might get like 10, 50, oh my God, I want to use all of this for me to do whatever.
Right, right. Sure. Good. Okay, great. Thank you. Any others? Good. Okay. Okay, yeah, I think that's great. I mean, we all know about the proverbial character who spends all his time at work and never any time with his family, and he regrets it on his deathbed that he didn't prioritize the things that mattered in life. So I think that that's a wonderful description of that. Good. Yeah, so we can think of others. One response that some give to that question, how can you protect yourself from the dangers of the excessive love of money, is set up an economic system that doesn't incentivize that. Okay, and I'm actually, I have come after a number of years of dealing with the issues. It has been a long journey, but I have come to believe in a capitalist system. Okay, I really do. I really do think that this is the best system in a bunch of different ways. Okay, but it has been a long journey. And look, capitalism does incentivize self-interest and exploitation. And some people say, well, the answer there is divide it all equally, share and share alike, socialism of some stripe, where there aren't incentives for people to privilege themselves at the expense of others. Okay, and I recognize, I totally get how a socialist system or a system that is intent on coercive sharing or something like that does get rid of the infrastructure problem of self-interest incentives, where you have a bunch of different business persons who are all incentivized to greed in certain ways, right? I get it. I understand how that solves that problem. It leads to other problems, though, including especially efficiency problems and, like I mentioned before, creativity and innovation problems. People have no incentive to try to find the most efficient way to make the product, and you end up with a lower overall level of prosperity in the society because people don't have the incentives to do their best, to work hard, etc. Okay, so I'm not sure that changing the infrastructure and changing the economic system is the answer here. I think the answer might be, at least for us individually in this classroom, the answer is to pursue individual practices that enable us to operate within a capitalist system in a manner that is consistent with Christian moral teaching. Okay, not maybe to be activists or rail against the system, but rather to recognize that you can function within the system. You know, if you do regularly give away some percentage of your income, or you regularly donate some percentage of your time, or do other kinds of practices, you can function within the system in a manner that is controlled and that is consistent with Christian teachings about the importance of love and care for others and service, etc. Okay, so that would be my take on that. Is I'm not an advocate of changing the system as a way of solving the problems of greed and the way capitalism seems to incentivize that. Are there any final comments on the Aidney article or on any of these ideas that we've been discussing in the last few minutes? Let's turn to the Schmeltekopf article on page 65. This article offers us a model for understanding the role of the business person in the grand scheme of things from a Christian perspective. Okay, so again, apologies, I'm keeping a tight board this semester. I've got to do all my notes in front of the video, so I can't keep these up here for very long. In the Schmeltekopf article, let me see if I can spell this. Yes? Let's see. Ooh, 10 points for Gryffindor, I got it. Okay, in the Schmeltekopf article, Schmeltekopf talks about the stance of business in the community and what ought to be the proper role of business persons. If you look on page 66, first column, I'm going to read this. When asked recently if business maintained a reasonable balance between profits and the common good, 85% of the American public answered no. Pretty high number. A little further down, in addition, a survey conducted by the Gallup organization, this is a few years ago, but I think the numbers here have gotten worse, in 1988 revealed that of the 10 major institutions in American life, business ranked last in public confidence and trust. Okay, this cynicism regarding the institution of business is not only bad for business, but it is also harmful to our wider culture because it encourages the view that no human institutions can be trusted, which is certainly a common view these days. Real quickly, if a couple of you could just maybe help us all out, why do you think business has this bad reputation? What do you think is the explanation here? What's the background? Okay, all right. Maybe media stories often highlight just the corruption and not necessarily all the good that business does, right? When your company is donating hours to the local homeless shelter or something like that, or helping make sandwiches or building much needed inner city housing for people who otherwise wouldn't have anything, that doesn't get highlighted in the newspaper or on the TV spot. It's only when a corruption occurs, some sort of scandal. So maybe that skews things to some extent. There's also, I think, legitimacy maybe to some of these critiques. Maybe business persons are putting their own interests ahead of the interests of the community. Maybe that is part of the story here. Okay, well, Schmeltekopf goes on to say that it doesn't have to be this way. Okay, and that's an important message for us in this module. You can be the change that this field needs to see. Okay, you don't have to be one of the corruption statistics. You can be the change that this field needs to see. Look on page 68. Here is the model that Schmeltekopf sketches for us about the role of business persons, and it is a good role. It is a very good role, a very valuable, important role in society. Okay, in the first column, Schmeltekopf writes, if we believe this story, we can see within it an implicit theological or metaphysical foundation for a rich understanding of the meaning and purpose of business. What are these underlying and grounding convictions? First, since God is the creator, the earth is the Lord's, and he has commissioned us to take care of his world and of those who dwell therein. Second, since we are called to be stewards of all that God has entrusted to us, we must use the just institutions established within society to facilitate that stewardship. Third, all worldly goods are a gift of God, and thus we must be good stewards of our economic resources. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. Look on the second column there. As a specific institution, the economy, as understood in the Judeo-Christian tradition, has as its guiding and foundational starting point the grounding convictions I have noted, that God is the creator of heaven and earth, that this world is his, not ours, that what we possess, including our wealth, is a gift from God, that we are charged by God to be good stewards of all that has been given and entrusted to us, that our labor and talents are to be offered in service to others, not merely in service to ourselves, etc. Okay, what Schmeltekopf is sketching here is the following kind of a model. Okay, God makes the world, and he also makes us as participants in the world. And he's made us fiduciaries who are responsible for tending the world, or for taking care of it. Okay, and it is our job to take the raw resources of the world, and the business person moves these resources to constructive uses. Okay, so maybe that takes the form of hammering out the raw, unfinished stump of a tree into a chair or a couch. Maybe that takes the form of manufacturing electronics using certain metals found in nature, okay, which can be made into a mechanism or a process by means of which people communicate with each other in ways that could never have been imagined just a few generations ago. Okay, so the world is given to us by God in an unfinished state, in a raw state. And when humans, the business persons, act upon the world, the result is finished products. And those finished products are of incredible value in improving the lives of people. Okay, and that's just the basic model, is we are fiduciaries who have been tasked with taking care of the world. Now, some may interpret that fiduciary responsibility as a license to exploit the world, to destroy natural resources. Schmeltekopf argues that that's not what the mandate is supposed to be, though. You are supposed to sustainably harvest the world and use those resources to make things that are of value to people that improve their lives. Okay, and making or creating is not the only part of the business person's process and role that is valuable. Efficiency is an incredibly valuable thing, too. Okay, if all you're doing in business is making a particular spreadsheet more efficient or ensuring that supplies are being more efficiently assembled together in the right kind of place, that's incredibly valuable because the resources that are saved by virtue of your efficiency gains can be deployed for all sorts of uses that would not otherwise have been possible. Okay, so when humans act on the raw products in the world, we can create finished products that are of value to ourselves and also to the world if we're doing it right. Okay, also to nature if we're doing it correctly. And that can make the raw world as it was originally given to us a much better place and improve our own lot and our own lives in the process. Okay, the role of the business person is an incredibly, incredibly valuable role. Because the business person, the merchant, is the one who is in charge of the infrastructure, the logistics. He's the one who is the mover who moves things from the raw state to the finished state, to the usable state. And that's an incredible service to humanity. Okay, let me stop and ask if there are questions or comments about the Schmeltekopf article so far, or any reflections on any of these things. one of my goals in this module is to inspire you guys that what you're doing as business persons is really important. It's not just about making money at the expense of others or finding vulnerable people. If you're in the right kind of a profession, what you're doing is actually of great value to the community. And you can take pride in your work and know that what you do is really, really valuable. And not just see your work, as a functional way to pay the bills or to move from one day to the next, but rather to see your work as a vocation that you can do in order to contribute and to be of worth. And that's an important thing for us to have as a sensibility in our work lives. And that's one thing that I think that is pretty clear from the biblical fiduciary mandate. Okay, and it's something that that I think that we can embrace as business persons. One just quick buzzword that's often used for this model, the fiduciary model, is stewardship. In medieval times, a steward was somebody who was in charge of the estate. Okay, maybe the nobleman or the landlord left for a period of time and put it in charge of the steward. And basically the stewardship model, the model that Schmelzikoff is offering, says that we have been placed in charge of things by the landlord. And the job of the steward is to make the estate a better place while the landlord is away. And it's not ours to own. We don't own the natural world. But it is ours to use and to deploy for valuable purposes, as stewards do, and as they did in medieval times. Okay, so that's the model that, or the name for the model that is often used here. Okay, I like this case study a lot. Okay, everybody has heard of Gallery Furniture, or most who've lived in Houston for a while know about Gallery Furniture. Okay, Gallery Furniture is a locally owned, privately owned business owned by this dude, Mattress Mac. Okay, his advertising is everywhere. Some of it's pretty obnoxious, honestly. But he's a fun, lovable guy. Many years ago, his dream was to build the world's greatest furniture store. He began with $5,000 and operated under tents on the side of the freeway. His long-standing motto for himself and for his company is grateful for everything, entitled to nothing. He now runs a multi-million-dollar company with 400 American employees. All his furniture is American-made. Okay, he's known as Houston's philanthropist, believes in capitalism with a cause. He says in his motivational speeches, why work so hard if you can't do something positive with what you earn? He's a big Astros fan. He flies people to various Astro games, like for the World Series and stuff. When they play in the World Series, he flies people on his own dime to the opposing team's ballpark. He also runs a mattress giveaway that's kind of a marketing shtick for him. Okay, and I haven't ever participated, but I believe if you buy a mattress, a qualifying mattress, and the Astros win the World Series, you get your mattress for free. I think those are the rules and regs. Okay, but you gotta buy it before they get to the playoffs. So it's kind of a gamble. Okay, and it's marketing shtick for him. It gives him a lot of publicity. Ways in which he has been a philanthropist. Well, it's like a bunch over the years. He has helped build the first mobile stroke unit in the U.S. He has raised millions for the Bush-Clinton Tsunami Disaster Relief Fund. I'll list some more in just a minute. He gives motivational speeches. I like this first one. First step to success, find a job you love to do. So many people get stuck in jobs for years that they don't like. And they have to stay in the job because they got to make ends meet. If you can find a kind of work that you like to do, your life will be much more fulfilling professionally. Other ways in which he has been a philanthropist, though. He has opened store locations to shelter Houstonians, especially after Hurricane Harvey. He made a big effort after that his own house was underwater, and he opened all his stores for people to come in and sleep on the mattresses. He said to Time Magazine at the time, being together in a space is helpful for all of us. People don't feel like they are on their own. I am just doing what I can to help. Okay. Other ways in which he made it happen: 10 to 15 company trucks were deployed. He himself spent many hours of work retrieving victims from floods, as did a number of us, actually. He used to store display furniture for hurricane victims' use. It was not usable afterwards, had to be thrown out. He previously had opened a store to Hurricane Katrina evacuees, so this is something he was experienced at. He says, it reaffirms your faith in mankind when you see people coming in and giving up what they don't need. There's an incredible outpouring of support. It's just tremendous. Now, without a doubt, all of Mattress Mac's philanthropy does have a positive business impact on gallery furniture. Okay, so a lot of people who might not be customers of Mattress Mac's are aware of his corporate philanthropy and buy from Mattress Mac as a result of that. Okay, good reputation is increased by virtue of the philanthropy. New customers are attracted. Customers' loyalty is increased. It provides free advertising as well. Okay, however, I should say at the same time that he does it so much and so often, so frequently, so ubiquitously. I really doubt that this guy's doing it for the sake of the marketing. It is a marketing boost to his business, but he seems to have a very generous heart and would probably do this regardless of the marketing. I'm just saying that based on the amount of stuff that I've seen. By the way, his stores are really kind of cool. My wife and I took the kids out to the store on Highway 6 over here. It's really cool. They've got this enormous aquarium out there and like this Museum of Americana. You can go and see exhibits devoted to inventors. What else did they have out there? They had an in-store special, like very large, a kiosk is too small a word for this, is a very large wing of the store devoted to goods that were made by persons with cognitive disabilities, and you can purchase those. That was really cool. That was really cool. My wife and I purchased a couple things there. Okay. So the Harvey incident, for instance, especially enabled Mattress Mac to stand out from other businesses by opening up his stores for his local community. Okay, and as I mentioned, this enabled Mattress Mac to expand his customer base and further strengthen his current customer relationships. But like I said, also, he does it so much, so frequently, I think that he would do this anyway, whether or not it was good for his business. I think Mattress Mac is a great example here of somebody who has been very successful financially and also very successful at the same time morally in business. He's worth a couple $100 million, okay? And if he didn't give away, so much and didn't do so much for his community, he'd probably be worth $300 million. But like once you get to that point, what's 100 mil when you can be doing so much good with what you got? And I think that the message that he has sent through his many efforts to strengthen the community over the years have been really good for Houston business. Take care. Okay, really good for Houston business and have been a constructive thing. Okay, let us now move on. Okay, and if you'll, we're maybe going to catch up a little bit today. If you look on page 103 in the Beyond Integrity text, this is a short article by Willard, and it's an article attempting to discern what the purpose or what the business person should conceive of as his or her purpose. Okay. Willard writes the following. I'm reading on page 103, if you'll follow with me, please. Okay, he's quoting John Ruskin from the 1800s, and this says, the fact is that people never have had clearly explained to them the true functions of a merchant with respect to other people. Different professions have different jobs. The soldier's profession is to defend society. The pastor's to teach it. The physician's to keep it in health. The lawyer's to enforce justice. And the job of the merchant, that is the business person, his job is to provide for society. And a little further down, Willard writes, the answer to this question is supplied by the merchant's or manufacturer's function and the good that it supplies to the people in his community. His task is to provide for the community. His function is not to pluck from the community the means of his own self-aggrandizement. Okay, so Willard says the job of the business person is provision. Provision. Okay, now provision is an other-centered word. It is a word that is centered on the welfare of our fellow humans. My wife and I provide for our children. We are thinking about the welfare of others. I want to use the Willard article and his emphasis on provision as a kind of a catalyst to offer you guys a model for just a real big picture model for thinking about your own endeavors in business. Okay, and I want to suggest that you need to keep two things in mind simultaneously in order to be financially and morally successful in business. Okay, and those two things are provision as one, like Willard says, but also, if I could add to what Willard says, provision and profit. Okay, profit is a self-centered kind of a word. Okay, to profit is to make something for oneself or to enhance one's own well-being. And in a capitalist system, the reality is that it's a competitive system where one must think of profit in order to be successful. One must think of self-interest in order to be successful. You will not be in business for very long if you do not think of this as one of your main aims. Okay, and I want to suggest that you need to keep both of these goals, both profit and provision. Think of them as like, together, like arrows in a quiver or something. They need to be kept together simultaneously in order for us to participate in a capitalist system in a manner that is morally and financially successful. Okay, if you are doing just one of these things, provision or profit, without regard for the other, then you will not be successful in all ways in a capitalist system. So for instance, if you're just doing profit, you may be financially successful, but you might have a terrible reputation, and you look back on your life at 75 and maybe you've made a lot of money, but how did you do it? Well, you did it by selling cigarettes to minors or something like that because you knew they were a vulnerable demographic group. I don't know, whatever, right? They were a vulnerable demographic group that you could make a lot of money from. But if you just pursue provision at the expense of profit, then you're not going to be financially successful. You won't be in business for very long. Okay, businesses are not charities. You cannot run your business at a loss like you can run a church at a loss because churches make it up through donations. You have to run your business at a profit. And quite frankly, even if your aim is to give away some of your gains from business, you won't have any gains to give away if you don't think of profit. Okay, so you must think of profits and not just provision if you're going to have a sustainable enterprise over the long term. Profit is the self-interested motive, and provision the other's interested motive. And the way forward in business, for those of us who aspire to be successful in business financially while also doing so in a manner that is consistent with Christian moral teachings, the way forward is to think of your own interests and the interests of others, to find ways where you and your customers can be mutually benefited by virtue of the product you are giving them. Okay, don't get into a business where you are selling a product that you know is harmful to your customers. Okay, if you do that, that's just the profit motive and not the provision motive. Rather, aspire to find a line of business, a business enterprise where what you do can make you money, gobs and gobs of money, while also at the same time being of value to those who are using your services or your products. Okay, questions or comments about the Willard article? It's kind of a short article, or about this, this notion of how to operate in a capitalist system successfully by thinking of both profit and provision simultaneously. Questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to leave you guys with one last case study. You know, this case study is going to take too long. So that's it. Okay? I'm going to call it a day. Yes, Sohi.